We are inherently wired for well-being. We all hold the keys to greater happiness, ease, and connection in our lives. However, we are not taught how to access these capacities. Welcome to Wired for Well-Being, where we explore how understanding your nervous system can transform the way you live, love, and relate. Because when you work with your nervous system instead of against it, life opens up with more compassion, freedom, and ease. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein. I've been a practicing clinical psychologist for the last 40 plus years, and I'm joined by my friend and producer, Steve Lessard. Steve, how was your weekend?
I had a great weekend, and I am still buzzing, Jeffrey, from closing the last group of the Healing Trauma Program and moving those people through that program and seeing their transfer. I've been on a high for the past couple of days, just riding that energy wave from seeing those people end that program so beautifully. Anyway, so I'm good. I'm energized, and I'm bringing that into our call today.
Oh, beautiful. It was a really lovely event. Each week, we use real questions from listeners like you as doorways to explore how we each can work with our nervous system, because while our stories differ, all our nervous systems speak a shared language. In today's episode, we'll explore why the nervous system perspective is such a powerful way to understand and work with the operating system of our lives. Understanding this opens our lives to be in greater harmony with our deepest desires and values. At the same time, we can diminish pain, struggle, and conflict within ourselves and within our relationships. So let's dive in. Steve, what do you have for us this week?
Well, we've been getting some great feedback on the podcast. And one of the things people have been asking for is a little bit more of an understanding of what is going on with the nervous system. It's been something we've been trying to incorporate in and finding interesting ways to share with people, because there is quite a bit of information. But I thought what we do today is I would ask you questions, Jeffrey, about the nervous system, so we can create a kind of a shared understanding here as our viewers and listeners are trying to get a sense of maybe some of the things we're talking about and some of the things we're sharing. So how does that sound?
Great idea. I love it.
Excellent. So the very first place to start naturally is, in simple terms, Jeffrey, can you explain what the nervous system is?
Sure. So the nervous system refers to the collection of nerves, the spinal cord, the brain, and messenger chemicals and hormones that allow the body to continue to live, to do the function it needs to do to preserve its life. And so it's a command center that has a tremendous bearing on our surviving. And it also influences, through part of the nervous system, our reactions and feelings, how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive the world, in addition to many, many other functions.
I like that analogy of a command center. I think that's really easy to hold on to. And I've also heard you talk about how it might not be currently set up to serve us. It's maybe a command center for an old operating system.
Right. So there's a lot of the nervous system that's just devoted to keeping your heart beating, your lungs breathing, your body temperature consistent, your blood pressure consistent. These are all essential survival functions. We also have a part of the nervous system that is specifically geared to keeping us safe from threat. And so this is the part of the nervous system that really has the most potential for us to begin to collaborate with it. Because the nervous system is designed to immediately snap into a reaction anytime that it perceives a particular or significant level of threat. And it can be anywhere from a safety threat to a life threat. There is sort of an increasing level of danger. And with that, we can enter into different types of responses, or what we call defensive states, to be able to help keep us safe. So in the old days, if a saber-toothed tiger jumped out from a patch of trees, we would naturally jump into fight. We would, or flight rather, we would run for our lives. We would run to save our lives. If we were cornered, we might, as a last effort, engage in fight with the saber-toothed tiger, hoping we and our friends would survive. So that's great and perfect to make sure that we survive. But we have those same qualities that none of us, for the most part, are being chased by saber-toothed tigers these days. But it gets turned on in the daily grind, being late, getting stuck in traffic, getting a bill you didn't expect, having a breakup, getting yelled at by someone, having an injury or an illness. Our nervous systems respond to these things as if we're still kind of in a fight or flight survival mode. And it really can take us over and drive us a bit.
Well, I haven't had a saber-toothed tiger experience. I have had a regular tooth golden retriever experience, and I was bit, unfortunately, in the face by a golden retriever when I was a
Ow.
kid. And that's the scar that I have here on my cheek. And for years, golden retrievers would terrify me. Other dogs I might be fine with. If it was a big dog, I'd be pretty scared. But anything bigger or scarier, funny to say, than a golden retriever. And I wanted nothing to do with. I'd like cross the street. I wouldn't go over a certain friend's house, and it was, a lovable, kind lab or something. So it seems like that's what was going on there.
Right, exactly. This is a great example of how our nervous system serves to protect us. So that was a horrible event. It was a trauma, right? Having a dog so close to your face, ripping at your face, it's terrifying. And your nervous system, to serve you, decided that any dog that reminded you of the quality, size, colors, or breed of that particular dog caused your nervous system to immediately want to go into flight, avoidance. So you'd go across the street. Now, it is a perfect response to make sure you don't get bit by that dog again. And your nervous system is generalizing it to any dog that could look like that. Now, you might find that years later, you're still walking across the street. Let's just make up a story. And then you might find, but I know these dogs are safe. It's not that dog that bit me when I'm a kid. But there you find that what you know to be true, that this dog is probably safe, is not in agreement with your nervous system, still sending you signals to get across the street, walk away from this dog, and put distance, right? So that's also a moment of where sometimes the nervous system doesn't continue to serve us, when it makes us go far outside of what we were going to do before to stay in our perceived comfort zone. How does that land?
Yeah, I mean, that contextualizes it, and that matches my experience that took me a while to get over, and thankfully I was able to. So you mentioned fight. You shared fight is a response when we see a saber-toothed tiger as one of the ways our nervous system snaps into a response. What are the other responses it might snap into?
So for a safety threat, and this is based on something we can talk about a little bit later called Polyvagal Theory. There's going to be no quiz on this. But if there's a safety threat, right, we usually have our two optimal choices are fight or flight. So with fight, I'm going to get into anger. And at the extreme, of course, it's employing my rage and anger to fight for my life. Lesser forms of that are irritation, anger, irritability, frustration, annoyance, right? Flight energy at the extreme is running like hell to get away from a threat. Okay, I can run away or I can fight. Those are my two choices there. And lower levels of flight energy, which we all have, are worry, anxiety, unease, concern, tension, needing for distraction. So those are fight or flight. Sometimes if you can't either fight or flight or are confused about what to do, we drop into a state called freeze, which is still similar to the fight or flight level. And then we have another kind of response. If it goes beyond a threat of safety and it goes towards life threat, we absolutely cannot run away. There's no option to run away. We can't fight. We're way overwhelmed. And then we don't even go into freeze. We go into collapse and shutdown. And this is where literally mammals can begin to play dead, because the only option at that point in time is to be as dead as possible so you don't get to continue to be picked on or hurt. And lower levels, if we're not always at the extreme of playing dead, are sleepy, tired, spacey, numb, flat, depressed, dissociated, and then on down towards feigning death, being really very removed.
So this is the system that our body is using to navigate threats.
Yes.
Let's go to that word threat then.
Okay.
Like, what's the range that the body might perceive as a threat?
That's also a great question, because it really depends on your history, right? For example, I was never bitten by a Labrador retriever, right? So I could walk down the street and never be afraid of them. So it wouldn't ever rise to threat for me, right? So it really depends on very many things. Number one, our nervous system is somewhat determined genetically by our parents' nervous systems. What we found is that trauma, if it's experienced really very stressful events, which is how I'm defining trauma at this point in time, can genetically, some of the qualities of an adaptation to trauma in the nervous system can be passed down 5 generations after the trauma. So part of our nervous system set point is determined both by our parents' genetics, what they're contributing to us, any kind of trauma, adversity, or hardship that they experienced, significant, not like getting an E on a test in school, but something a bit more traumatic, upsetting, long-lasting. Those things enter our nervous system and make us more prone to be dysregulated. If we've had trauma ourselves, that determines it even more, like your incident with the dog sharpened your trauma response to around dogs. You wouldn't run across the street for an American flag or for a rock or for a cat. It was a dog that resembled size and color and intent in your heart that got you to go away. So that what becomes a threat for people changes. But what I can tell you is this, is that most people will perceive now any felt sense that they are not being respected, listened to, cared for, seen. Anything that makes them feel insecure, not wanted, not appreciated, or ashamed and judged, any of those things will actually feel like threats. So even if I haven't had a particular trauma, there are certain social interactions which will cause my nervous system to get defensive and reactive, right? If someone's coming to me and saying, hey, I don't know, they complain, they go, I know you try really hard, but just be a little softer with me when I'm in a more tender mood. I need a little bit more space, right? That's a very different way to hear it from my nervous system than if someone says, asshole, back the F up, which is going to make me immediately feel more scolded and more reactive, and it's going to land differently in my nervous system. So our nervous system is like the music of our lives that we try not to pay attention to most of the time.
So I notice when I'm tired or stressed or angry, hungry, frustrated, nervous, that I can react to something someone's sharing from a very different standpoint than if maybe I'm happy or spent the day doing something I've loved to do and feel nourished, or I'm fed, I didn't skip lunch and I'm not snapping at someone in the meeting. I wonder if this starts to tie into unpacking that term you shared a little while ago, polyvagal. Is this maybe a place to get into
Sure.
starting to understand that perspective that I offered, but letting people
Sure.
in on this term?
So Polyvagal theory, it's a theory, was Stephen Porges was the first person who researched this and articulated this. For years, we thought that the vagus nerve, which is an important cranial nerve, basically had an on switch and an off switch. So either we would be in sympathetic, which is activation, fight or flight or freeze, or we could be in the rest and digest, like an on and an off. What the polyvagal theory began to point to is that we have more than one branch of the vagus nerve called, that's poly, more than one, polyvagal. And so one branch of the vagus nerve takes us towards rest and digest regulation. And one branch of it takes us to that much deeper, less connected defensive state of shutdown and collapse, disappearing, despair. So, according to polyvagal theory, our oldest defensive functions, the ways that we could protect ourselves, were more in that low energy collapse, shutdown phase. And we think of that in terms of reptiles, that they have this ability. They don't, a lot of them don't fight. They just immediately go play dead, and they can do that very well. Mammals do that as well, too. If you've ever seen a possum do it, it's instant. They just roll over like they're dead. The next level of defensive function, according to polyvagal theory, is the idea that we develop the fight or flight mechanism, that we became more able to defend ourselves and to be able to be more active in our defense and protection. And then the most recent is the fuller development of this ability to be in regulation. So I talked before about these two extremes of dysregulation, right? When I'm dysregulated, I'm either going to go into fight or flight or freeze, or I'm going to drop down into shutdown and collapse, and any of those flavors in there. But there's another option. There's always another option, and that option is to find our way back towards regulation. Other names that regulation has been called sometimes is the tend and befriend zone, meaning that when I am in regulation, I'm able to tend to others, tend to my needs, tenderly tend to others, and befriend people. And Steve, that's what you're saying. When you're fed and you're rested, someone can come to you with a problem or a need, and you can be warm and welcoming and generous with your time and your care. You're in regulation. You have access to the tend and befriend qualities that all of us can access when we're in regulation, and all of us have great difficulty accessing them when we're either in fight or flight or when we're in shutdown and collapse. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I'm starting to think about the ways that I can notice these states in my body. And my sense is the body is an excellent gateway when we can become more attuned to listening into our body as a sense of what's going on. So maybe now we can hop into how these states show up in our body when I'm feeling a certain way, or what I might notice, what the impact on the body is, because again, I know that you teach quite a bit of listening to those cues.
Right. So each state has, and what I mean by state is fight, flight, or shutdown, or the flavors within. They're different states. And each state has a physiological kind of signature and a psychological or cognitive signature. So when I'm in fight, here's something that's also important to know. Your state drives your story. Your state drives your story. So when I'm in fight, the only story that's going to be going on is a fight-driven story, which means I've been wronged, I have a right to be angry, and the other person or the other group, they're wrong, they're bad. They are the ones that wronged me. So I need to fight or make them realize they were wrong or get them to undo the wrong. And by the way, we'll go into fight anytime we perceive that something is painful, disappointing, unfair, or unjust. And so we'll feel anything of anywhere from annoyance, irritation, tension in the body, heat, clenching, jaw, furrowing our brow, keeping ruminating about and replaying what they did or said or didn't do or didn't say that made us feel bad and angry. So paying attention to tension, heat, making fists, jaw clenched, tightness in the body, and feeling of images, impulses about wanting to express your hurt, your anger, what they did was wrong. Those are all ways of beginning to know, oh, okay, I'm in anger. And a lot of us recognize that, but it's helpful to begin to see it. Everybody gets angry, right? Everybody has that wiring. And so much of the time we judge ourselves for where we go in our wiring. That's part of the liberation of this perspective this is a non-judgmental, non-pathological point of view. So that's fight. Flight, right? The anxious energy, the drive to run away from issues can manifest as literally a desire to get out of this room, get out of this conversation, get out of this relationship and run away. But it can also be, I can't face that person. I can't text them back. I can't face having to write that email. I can't face writing those checks. We begin to avoid. We begin to get overwhelmed. That's where we can perceive anxiety bubbling up. Also, feeling fidgety, needing to continually adjust ourselves, not quite feeling comfortable in our own skin, tightness in the body, restricted breathing or rapid, shallow chest breathing. Again, tension in the jaw, but different than anger, which has a kind of fire piece to it. In fear, in anxiety, in flight, there is much more of a worried, unsafe, more feeling like you better get yourself out of here. I'm not ready to face this. I don't have the strength to face this. In fight, we don't feel quite as unsafe because we feel like we have energy to combat this injustice. So that's how we tell about whether we're in sympathetic, fight or flight. We talked about freeze before. Freeze is where I'm still kind of active in my mind. I'm thinking. I'm very present here. I just don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I keep trying to decide, should I do this? Should I? And I'm trying to decide about something to do. And I'm so afraid of making the wrong decision that I just get stuck in the circling about this. There's a tremendous amount of tension in the body. The mind is moving very fast and it's unable to take a step in any direction. Now that's different than when we go low energy. One of the immediate differences is we become unclear mentally. Our mind is not moving and thinking so fast. The more depressed, despairing, spacey, removed we get, the slower our mental processing becomes. We become less in touch with our body. It becomes more tired, more heavy. We may seek sleep or avoidance or rest. And sometimes we seek that because every state is helpful for us. And this low energy state is what we will go into if we're injured or sick. It will our nervous system will pull us here because that's also how we repair. But we can also go here because it may be the safest response our nervous system feels. Some nervous systems feel so unsafe feeling anger that they immediately go into shutdown so that they don't have to feel so threatened by feeling anger.
I've seen it in myself and as well as the people in the programs that we support, where they've got this growing awareness that they're in a state. They're listening to their body cues, and they're seeing patterns, and they realize they're in a state instead of being regulated, and can feel frustrated or bad of like, why am I here again? What's going on? And you've said something that there are no bad states. Can you unpack that a bit more? Like, it feels like there are kind of some spaces I don't want to be in.
Okay, there are plenty of spaces we don't want to be in. That's truth. But any space that we go to is designed by our nervous system to give us information and to help save our life. So again, while we're not battling a saber-toothed tiger, most of us don't have to struggle daily to keep ourselves alive. It gives us information, though, about how my nervous system is responding to the daily warp and woof of life. So our emotions are information. My friend and colleague Deb Dana has a wonderful quote that I often use when I'm teaching. It's called, she says, your nervous system does not tell you who you are or what you are. There's no pronouncement morally or ethically or value-wise. It only tells you, your nervous system only tells you how you are. Just tells you you're angry. We do the rest by going, I'm a bad person for getting angry. I shouldn't have lost my crap at that moment. I should be better. That's our own stuff. The nervous system is just telling you something felt hurtful, disappointing, unfair, unjust. We react in anger. That's all that it's telling us. It's not telling us we're a good or bad person. So beginning to listen to the messages of our nervous system is a very different response than I should be in control of everything I feel. That's one of the liberating things about this perspective, by the way, is that if I'm a psychological being and I have this one mind that is a cauldron of impulses and desires and things I don't even know about, and I have to control it all and hide what I think is shameful and act like a good person all the time, we feel like a failure and judgmental of ourselves when we get sad, feel ashamed, get angry, lose our temper, lose confidence, get scared. And if we begin to lean more into a nervous system perspective, we can see this as, oh, this is just the workings of my body. This is what I've inherited. This isn't me per se. This nervous system is alive in every single human being. And we all have our variations of how we respond to it. But these capacities, unless someone is literally brain or nervous system damaged, someone will have all of these capacities. So since we all go there, the choice is we can either fight them and judge ourselves for them, or we can learn how to work with it so we can shift ourselves out of these painful states of dysregulation, like getting angry is a message, and sometimes we get angry, but staying angry is a pain. Staying afraid and terrified is a pain. Staying depressed, despairing, low energy, feeling defeated, deflated, again, is a message. But if we stay there, if we live there, it begins to actually drive the quality or the lack of quality in our life.
You know, you and I joke that like I'm working my way towards like an associate's degree in this work as I'm building my knowledge base. So let me see if I got this. We all have a command system. It was put there evolutionarily. It's set up to, at a basic level, put us into shutdown or collapse. And at another level, it's potentially there to help us fight, flight, or freeze. These are there to escape danger so we don't die, which is its one of its jobs, if not maybe its main job. But now there's another state, a more recent evolutionary state, where we can tend and befriend and be regulated. And that the information in those states, not one of those is necessarily bad. It's just information about what's going on inside. And then this nervous system perspective that we're using here in this podcast, as well as what you just sort of unpacked, allows us to start getting a better idea of what's going on inside and maybe starting to match it with our intentions, goals, or desires of how we act and behave on the outside.
Yes. Yes. I might say that last part a little differently. That's a great summary. Thank you. Deb Dana says that polyvagal theory is a way to feel safe in taking a risk, to fall in love with life again. So there is something that's more. there's something that if we can actually work with our nervous system, a tremendous amount of the problems each of us encounter in living our lives are actually nervous system related, nervous system determined and driven, not necessarily psychologically driven. And that it's a much more compassionate place to work from. It's about enabling us to create a kind relationship with this protective system we have, but to work with it in a way that doesn't always commandeer the bus or drive it all the time, every day. So it's really a choice, in some ways, of a type of conscious evolution. Instead of being driven by program, by your survival program all the time, which it is, unless we're aware of this, it's in the background doing that. It's selecting what you think about, it's selecting what you worry about, it's selecting what you react to. Again, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, it also causes the vast majority of our suffering. And so understanding that we never get rid of the nervous system, but we want to be able to work with this aspect of our protective nervous system so that we don't always have to have the alarm bells going off unless they're really, really necessary. And for most of us, they go off because someone took me an extra 2 hours to text me back. No tiger, just no text. And all of a sudden I can get excited, right?
This is fun, this slightly different style that we're taking here to start to unpack these themes and this information. And I have no doubt that some of our viewers have more questions. We could spend hours in any one of these lanes and really understand them. And I know that's really what your work does in other areas as well. But I guess what I'm getting to is, the purpose of this series and this program is not just to answer specific people, real life questions, although that's what we do a lot. It's also to help clarify this. So maybe an invitation for individuals out there who want to understand certain aspects, like let us know maybe where you want us to go and what areas of this that you want to unpack more. It doesn't just have to be a question about something that you've experienced that you'd like some clarity on. It can very much be something around these theories and principles of how to better apply them to your life. So Jeffrey, maybe you can let people know how to get in touch with us and send any questions they have.
Yeah, Steve, those are great points. Thank you. I am passionate about helping people understand and embody this perspective because of its life-changing and transformative potential for every person who engages with this. If you'd like to send a question, feel free to dial our number, 866-357-5156. If for some reason you can't reach that number, feel free to send an email, ideally with an audio recording so we can play it. And if not, just a typed email to hello@drjeffreyrutstein.com. I'm also really excited to announce that registration is open now for my flagship program, the Healing Trauma Program, with Sounds True. Steve and I run that together. And if that speaks to you, please feel free to check it out. You can find a link to the program in my bio where it says links, or you can go to drjeffreyrutstein.com/links, LINKS, and find your way there. And finally, Steve, thank you as always for being my partner in this lovely and exciting venture. I always appreciate our time together here.
Yeah, thank you, Jeffrey. I do as well, and this was a fun exploration into this topic today.
And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for spending the time. Hope to see you next time. Bye for now.